So, welcome. If I can introduce the two of us who are presenting today. I'm Steve Sidey. I'm one of the directors at Smart Impact, who are providers of computer systems and solutions for not-for-profit organizations. And Alan, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everybody. Alan Reed, independent consultant for the not-for-profit sector. I work with charities and membership organizations, helping them with their technology choices and implementation.
So, what we're going to do, well, there's four main bits and questions and answers at the end. So Alan and I are going to be sharing. Essentially, he'll do the first part, and I'll do the second part. But if we start to move on, I will hand over to Alan.
So thank you. As I say, Alan Reed. I've been working with charities and membership organisations on their CRM and web projects since the late 1990s. Really, I can remember conversations with boards of trustees saying, "Do we need a website? Do we really want to spend our money on that kind of thing? We value the personal touch, and we don't want anything to get in the way of that." So going all of the way back then to now, where websites and apps are an intrinsic part of what most nonprofits do for a living. So starting off, we've done a little bit of a survey in preparation for this webinar over the last few months, where we've talked to over 50 organizations about their CRM and digital projects, where they've started off saying it's going to be a complete transformation. We're going to magically turn around how we engage with everyone, and ask them, okay, well, you spent the money. How over the last 3 years or so, how did you get on with it? What did it mean to you? What were your results? So we were asking them, did they achieve the goals that they set out to achieve? What went badly or well? And do they now feel like their engagement channels and what they do for a living with their staff, what they do at the back office, do they feel that they're tightly integrated? And then, very importantly for this webinar, did they manage the projects together or separately? Did they do one bit and then build on top of it or underneath it, or did they manage them separately? What we got out of that, unfortunately, was some not good news. Some people who were like they'd come back from a tour of Vietnam and had a kind of 2,000-yard stare of shock from what they'd been through. Others were just disappointed at the results, and there were some good exceptions where actually we could all learn from where it went really well. So what we found was that even after the projects, over 65% feel that the CRM digital elements really don't talk to each other in the way that they had envisaged. There's still a lot of compensating going on behind the scenes. Some organizations are still experiencing what they feel is a reasonably high degree of data loss, meaning that as people engage with content, they're not able to see it very well. They're not able to be as personalized as they would like to be because the information is not being recorded or made available to their staff members the way they would like. They feel that their online presence is not up to date with the best practice in the sector, even after spending quite a lot of money and effort sometime over the last 3 years. And then others still feel, and well over half still feel, that it's very difficult to be nimble. It's very difficult to innovate. And this is particularly the case where you've got multiple suppliers in the mix and having to get agreement across all of that. So still too much struggling going on. A little bit of an indictment of the suppliers in the market in many cases, where these suppliers have been working with comparable challenges for decades now, and the projects are still not fully delivering for too many nonprofits. So one of the quotes that we got back from the survey, from the anecdotal parts, was one of the challenges that people have is that with digital projects, and using the word digital to mean website projects, sometimes with an app element as well. That's increasingly the case, and very commonly with marketing automation and integrated bulk communications channels. So suddenly everyone's got different audiences that they have to deal with, and they want different things, which unless you're finding economies elsewhere by streamlining the work elsewhere, just adds a burden to your existing teams that they struggle to cope with. So how do we get here? As I mentioned, I'm kind of old and gnarly, and have been doing these projects for a long time. So the evolution really started going back to 2000. So which isn't that long ago. It's certainly, if you're in your 50s like me, doesn't feel that long ago. So basic poster websites with static images, that was the name of the game, and spending huge amounts of money on those back in the time. Then ignoring a lot of history and just kind of condensing it. Over then the 10 years after that, up till about 2014 or so, the focus was on essentially online self-service. So pushing some self-service out to supporters, volunteers, members, customers, and so that people could do some things online, whether it's booking on an event or updating their preferences, making a donation, renewing their membership subscriptions. But typically there was no personalization of that. Everyone got the same website. If you logged in, and then your landing page would be the same for someone who's been a part of your organization for decades and attends all of your events and is part of your committees or is a volunteer, and then someone who's come into your world 10 minutes ago, they would essentially get the same website and be able to do the same things. And then over the last 7 or 8 years, what's really been the focus is, yes, we need all of the online self-service. We still need the transactions and the e-commerce, but what's been built on top of that, and the websites I've been involved in, CRM and website projects, have all been about adding value on top of transactions. So personalization, making sure that all content is relevant to the person once they've identified themselves, helping with things like cross-sell, not necessarily in the Amazon model, but in terms of, you're interested in this, well, you might want to attend this event, or we've got this really good piece of content for you, and serving it up to make it available so that there's a higher degree of take up. There's also been a focus on increasing independence, the nonprofits valuing their independence more with the rise of using content management systems, of course, and making those much more available to staff within the organization so that they can manage their own articles, their own thought leadership, without having to queue up with a muffin at some particular person's desk or go to a supplier for every little change that you want to make. So part of the challenge that we're seeing on projects now in the current year is this. Far too many nonprofits are stuck back there. They're struggling with, so they've got it to the point where, yes, I'm managing basic e-commerce and basic transactions, but I'm not making the website work for me in terms of personalization, relevance, and being an asset in terms of recruitment, retention, proving the value of the relationship, helping supporters feel part of the mission. Too many nonprofits don't have their websites working for them, despite still spending lots of money and increasing sums of money on them. Too many are stuck back there. So part of what it's relevant to talk about is how we can break out of that, how nonprofits can resolve those issues. So this is what a lot of people are intending that their website should look like. This is a little Giphy from Wizard of Oz. If anyone's too young to, actually, younger people are seeing it at Christmas. It seems to be that middle kind of 30 bracket that doesn't recognize the Wizard of Oz these days. So this is what people are intending. This is the big picture for their website. And what's often happening behind the scenes is that, yes, the website looks like that. There's lots of flames and color, lots of sound and light, but actually behind the scenes, the staff are having to pretend that it's fully integrated. They're having to pretend that this is a joined up service. So there's still a lot of manual work going on. There's still a lot of reconciling stuff coming off the website and having to do stuff outside of your systems. And there's still a lot of data loss where as people are consuming content and engaging with content, that simply vanishes. And it's not available to then help you be more relevant, targeted, personalized with your stakeholders. So it's worth talking about the how projects tend to be done. So there's still an element of people thinking of back office and what your staff need and your processes at the back office, and thinking of them very separately from how your external stakeholders engage with you as an organization. So, and that separate thinking has tended to lead to a lot of problems. So, but we know the reality. You know, mostly it's different software. What people are deploying at the back office is a different block of software from what is being deployed on the website. That's going to continue to be the case. Historically, it was always very different suppliers as well. One of the interesting things that's happened over the last 8 years or so is that the majority of or many CRM providers have also added website capability to their offering, so they've become more of a one-stop shop. And the idea there, of course, is to it's a sales advantage and is to reduce the complexity of projects as well. So the traditional pathway that still goes on too often is that a charity or a membership organization will appoint their supplier for fundraising or for membership management, for the back office functions of their staff. So then what then happens is that back office project, the CRM project, is run in a bit of a vacuum. And it's separate from the website and other digital channels. So there's lip service paid to talking about digital, but it's really run in a bit of an echo chamber, a bit of a vacuum. So the focus is very much on back office processes, reporting, things like your data migration. And then talking about the website is very much phase two, very much hidden away in the project. So then what happens is that later, a website supplier is appointed. So, very often people will go live with their new website. Sorry, go live with the back office or get the back office to a very late stage. Then serious thought starts coming into the website or other digital channels. And that might be a new supplier is appointed. It's run as a separate tendering exercise or certainly a very separate project. And the problem there is, I put here, it's a little bit like introducing a dog and a cat. It could go really well. It does sometimes, but often not enough thought is given to how that introduction will work. And the two sets of developers, the two sets of suppliers don't actually agree on fundamental aspects like where is all of the data going to live? How are all of these processes going to be managed end to end? And how are we going to make changes that affect both the back office and the web? So quite often what happens is there are a series of horrible realizations that come out at that point, which is that your new digital supplier is saying, well, you really shouldn't have, I wish you hadn't done it that way. Or if I'd been involved in that decision, I would have said do this in a different way. And they've already been done. So that can result in a significant amount of rework. Or very often the website supplier is just told to lump it. It is what it is. I'm not going to go and tell my colleagues to change the way they work or to rearrange data within the current systems. Therefore, you just have to make the best of it and put some lipstick on the pig, etc. Very often as well, the two suppliers still struggle with integrations and the ideal integration model. I've sat through enough meetings where two sets of suppliers throw three-letter acronyms at each other and disagree about what best practice is, with the client being stuck in the middle. So it's a really undesirable position to be in. So we then get the organization having grumbling ensues. No one's quite happy. The back office people are having to compensate for the lack of proper end-to-end integration. The website people are not happy. They can't represent personalization and services the way they would like to represent. And it becomes very difficult to make changes. So essentially it gets out of date very quickly. Instead of this being a forever home that people can invest in and carry on improving, it quickly gets static and stale and out of date. And then what happens is that the client has a rinse and repeat element. A new management person comes on board, the complaints get too loud, and then the cycle repeats. So we have to change something. We have to, refresh our presence online and at the back office. So this is partly why so many nonprofits are in a fairly constant state of either churn of their technology or being deeply unhappy with their technology. It's this in the modern day, doing a piecemeal approach can actually be a very false economy. So the big problem with separation that we still find in the current year is that a lot of nonprofits, too many nonprofits, still overlay the digital side on their existing ways of working. So they don't rethink it, they just slap it on the top. It's plonked on, whatever technical term you lead. So then you have your harassed workforce who've got stuff coming in, inbox is full, a queue of people at the end of the desk, etc. Already got multiple channels to deal with. And then what happens is we lay a website on top of all of that, and then the website can actually make things worse because essentially it's just another inbox. It's just another place. It's somebody described this as like walking around their house. There's a pile of ironing over there that needs doing. There's a pile of gas bills and other bills over there, etc. So it's just another inbox into their lives instead of actually being an end-to-end process that is saving them time. So this just layering digital on top of existing ways of working is categorically a big part of the problem and really has to be rethought. So, of course, what nonprofits are trying to get to is that the website and digital becomes an intrinsic part of how they work. And actually, the stupid computer starts to save a lot of time and deliver a better service online and through channels. And therefore, your colleagues have more time to do things that only a human being can do. So let's talk about how to get there. So the current reality of too many nonprofits is that there are multiple different blobs of data with lots of colleagues working in very separate silos, and too often as well different systems that aren't talking to each other. Very often those different systems will have different online components that again are not talking to each other and sometimes don't even have a single sign-on for your external stakeholders. So how it should be, the modern way that works, and we're seeing increasingly being enacted, although not offered enough, is that there needs to be a recognition of the fundamentals, which is that nonprofits essentially live or die by the data and engagement that you have about your supporters, your members, your external stakeholders, and then a recognition as well that it's very difficult to be personalized if you don't know anything about someone. If you don't know anything about who's on your website right now or who's identified themselves on your website, then it's all anonymous, generic spray and pray, and you'll get commensurately less take-up and less engagement from those people. So the fundamentals are recognizing those elements, which of course most nonprofits do at an intellectual level, but it's living it when it comes to these kind of projects. So recognizing that every whisper of engagement needs to be used to enrich your knowledge and drive more engagement. There's that virtuous cycle of better content gets better take up, derives better knowledge of who's reading what, and then you can derive better personalization from that knowledge. So the idea now that we're seeing increasingly is that the website and the CRM are so tightly integrated essentially to be a single logical system. It's still two bits of software because there's different technologies, but the way the project is run is thinking of it as a single logical system. You press a button there, a light flashes over there, and it's not something that has to be compensated for later. And that includes not just transactions. It includes things like thinking of your content, your newsletters, your events, your thought leadership material, your campaigns. They all have to be thought of within an overall structure of tagging, of who might be interested in this, what kind of things is this relevant for, and then when it comes to your people, your stakeholders in the database, they are under that same tagging regime of what is this person interested in. So it then becomes easy and relevant to match them automatically with a stupid computer doing it to the right content. So one client recently, a major charity, was describing it to their board like a dating app. There's only so far you can go down this path without it sounding odd, but the idea is that their content is always seeking recipients. Their recipients are always seeking content that's ideal for them and personal and relevant for them. So the idea is then, of course, that the content has a lot of tagging and information about it, metadata, and then, of course, the recipient has similar data about them. And when they come together, when the website can say, oh, I know that you have an interest area like this, and you live in the north of England. Well, this event on environmental issues is happening in the north of England. Therefore, it's a match. And that is the content that gets served up to this person on their landing page, for instance, when they come to your website or when they look at the app. It's really thinking about it in the totality like that, to avoid rework, to avoid getting a low level of benefits out of your projects. So essentially, thinking of them as logically or notionally as a single system, thinking of them separately as the root of a significant proportion of the projects that we're seeing across the sector, and changing that thinking is the key to bringing about beneficial change and saving an awful lot of money and heartache for non-profits, which is a little bit about that Steve is going to be talking us through, of lessons learned and how to avoid challenges on these projects. What I'd like to talk about just on this, how this is normally manifested for most nonprofits, is that the benefits of this kind of project, where you have thought about it end to end, are material. It's not just that it's a better service for stakeholders, or that you're saving your staff time. It's that your actual engagement is available to you, and it increases hugely, and you can then use that to manage your relationships ever better and on that beneficial cycle. So when you're looking at a person, you should be able to see the totality of that relationship, as CRM salespeople have been saying for 30 years. But that should include the content they're consuming. It should include what they do on your website. It should include what emails and their responses to surveys. All of that will drive whether they're highly engaged, not engaged at all, what is exactly they're interested in and not interested in, which will then enable you to run a much more effective engagement operation and support the mission of the nonprofit. So what I'd like to do, if I may, please, just before I hand over to Steve to talk about how nonprofits can do better and save themselves a lot of difficulties, is if we can just run a quick survey. So we're going to have a quick survey appear on your screen, please. And what we're seeing actually is that about half, more than half actually, of the delegates on the. So if we could show the results then. More than half of the delegates, as represented on this webinar, are still struggling to get a single view of the truth or provide end-to-end joined-up engagement. So still in 2022, struggling with that. At least 20%, 21% struggling being personalized and relevant. A smaller number, that's good to see, struggling with innovation and nimbleness, or struggling with tech supplier relationships. That's a more positive result. So great. So what I'll do from there is I'll just hand over to Steve, please, and then we can talk about how do we get ourselves out of this.
Okay, so thanks for that introduction and explanation of some of the key issues. What I'm going to do now is talk about what we see, what we do, and different ways of getting to an end goal to address some of those survey results, and specifically end-to-end processes and so on. So, our claim to know something about this is that we do CRM for non-profits, and we also do website for non-profits. And it's good to see in the delegates list that there's a number of our customers of each on the site, on the webinar. So a lot of what we'll be saying will be resonating with those guys, and I hope it's resonating for the rest of you as well. So if we go to pick up one of the slides Alan showed earlier, a typical non-profit has got a whole range of different key systems that support different operations. And as we talked about, quite often they're in isolation. Even if they're integrated, they're often just integrated in that department. So it's not a single view of the truth. And each of them has a web element. And in some of the worst cases, or some cases we find, a typical NFP's website is actually a series of different websites and portals with different styles, not connected together and so on. So it's a very disjointed experience for their volunteers, stakeholders, members, whoever they're dealing with. So we try to address the internal solution, single view of the truth, plus consolidate the website as well. And the way we do that is via a platform which is made up of a whole series of apps that we've built in the Microsoft Dynamics CRM environment, but linked seamlessly to websites and web portals. So they are just extensions of the system. All data can be shared and so on. So where that leads to is you've got a lot of your complex data requirements, business processes and so on, but they can be shared and personalized across your multiple audiences, so that you're giving different groups of people different services, but you're giving each person within those groups personalized services for their group. So the key benefit for staff is it gets rid of spreadsheets, it gets rid of manual workarounds, it frees up a lot of time, and it gives you a whole single view of the truth that you can start to drive your personalization with. So to quote sales conversations we have quite regularly, in fact, our customers like the idea of fewer systems, but what does that actually mean for their stakeholders? And by that, it's staff, managers, as well as external volunteers, members, donors, whatever it happens to be. So the first part is that it really is about integrated end-to-end processes. So you in the survey, a number of you, and the highest category was end-to-end processes is missing. So what we do at the beginning of any project is we start to look at different what we call member journeys. So here we've got an example of a fellow of a membership association, but you can see that the paths they go through are both online and CRM based. So there's stuff that your staff do, and there's stuff that the individual, in this case fellow, does online, but it's one process. It should be end to end. So at the beginning of every project, if we're doing both CRM and web, we look at the totality of what's required in that particular type of member journey, and we decide with you what's going to be online, what's going to be in the CRM. But you can see there we've got the different swim lanes, and the process crosses over. So there are lots of different member journeys we go through for all of the different types of stakeholder, but you can see they all address web, portal, CRM, because that's what's needed, and some of them can be very complicated. So that's the first step, that it means that your own staff need to understand what is now possible in terms of consolidated cross-web, cross-CRM processes, but also we will be talking to stakeholders, we'll be talking to members, we'll be talking to donors about what they need on their website. So that's part of an integrated project, but it basically is bringing the two things together. So what needs to integrate? Well, this is quite basic, but let's look at the main components of the website. So the first is the branding and design. So you can change that at any time and keep your website, or you can keep it as it is, but that's a separate part. So you can change your design and style. Secondly, there's standard web content. So, how do you integrate that? What's the benefit of integrating content? And thirdly, there's the member portals, self-service areas, donor pages, resource and collateral download areas, that sort of stuff. So we'll be picking up these later on in some of the examples, but each of them can be important, and let's discuss what's needed and therefore whether you should be considering to do a CRM and website at the same time or separately. So how do you decide what to replace? Well, it's a complex discussion, and I'll have some clues later on, but really the end result is about you making the data you have support the relationships you're trying to get to. So if you've got key requirements where you're trying to develop particular areas of your, let's call it market space, so it might be student activations or it might be particular groups of donors, then how do you use your data and how do you then transmit that via your website and portal to start really building up those areas? And do you have that data in the first place? Because if you don't, then it's a different discussion, but you might start to use your website to collect some of that. So it's a combination of different factors, but the point is, as Alan made very clearly, every CRM system is now integrated in some way to a website, even if that's like the Wizard of Oz doing loads of manual workarounds to make it look integrated. But you should be thinking about what you need to do to make that automated. So there are three main types of CRM and website projects that we come across and get involved in. So the first is where we're looking for CRM and a replacement of the entire website at the same time. So as we've talked about, that could be new branding, it could be complete end-to-end processes, and a perpetual development plan thereafter. Second category is keep the website as it is, and sort of make a portal area. So where you've got lots of separate portals for your CPD or your donor management or your collateral downloads, starting to integrate those into a single website with a more common look and feel, and that's really what this is about. So there are, we'll talk about the pros and cons of these a bit later on. And then finally, keeping your website as it is, but rather than grafting on bits of self-service, actually create a totally embedded portal that's directly fully integrated into the CRM. So those are the three options: complete replacement of CRM and web, replacing CRM with a little bit of web manipulation, and replacing CRM with a focused integrated portal, but keeping the website as it currently is. So let's look at each of those in turn. So the pros of these, if you're replacing everything, then as we say at the beginning of the project, in the discovery area, the discovery workshops, we can talk about complete end-to-end processes. So what do different member journeys look like? What's your payment taking processes? How do you do donor management? How do you do online renewals of any membership or regular giving, and so on and so on. So it can look at the whole process from website through to the CRM system, through to the finance system, and back to the website. So you've got a virtuous circle there, but we can look at that in totality. If you're just doing CRM, then you don't get the opportunity to revamp the website. And if you're just doing the website, you don't get the opportunity to revamp the processes within the CRM. So it has some limitations if you split the two, but we'll come on to benefits of splitting the two later on. So that's really key. And because you can look at processes in their totality, it also gives you the opportunity to optimize those. So we come across quite a lot of customers where they've got multiple processes that all do pretty much the same thing. So if you want to change behavior, you've got to change 5 different processes. We use this to consolidate those down to as few as possible, and ideally one that then can you change your process once, your behavior changes once on the website and on the CRM. So you can become efficient, and you can drive more efficiency by continually improving those processes. The next side, as Alan talked about, is personalization of web content. So by one of your stakeholders being able to profile themselves with tags. So I live in the north of England, I'm interested in the following subjects. That helps drive web content as well as portal content. So you can serve different focused content and collateral to different people based upon their self-profiling, and you can also learn about their profiling. So their behavior on the website can be integrated to the CRM system, and it can learn from their behavior. So they spend a lot of time looking at stuff around the north of England, but not about the southwest. So that starts to suggest that if they haven't profiled themselves, that they're more interested in that area. They're looking at a lot more information about, to use one of our customers, town planning in the urban environment. So you start to focus areas on that. So they're self-tagging by behavior as well as actually clicking on different profiling tags. So that's a really key thing that you can do in this sort of environment as well. Web data capture, we talked about that. So we've got the ability to, every time you give something to someone wants to download, you can ask them for a little bit more information. So you're building up more and more profiling, more and more tagging, which drives better personalization. And the other side of this is because you've got one supplier that's doing web and CRM, then you can have fewer what we've called late discovered gaps. So when you've got separate suppliers, and this can have separate suppliers as well, you can do web and CRM with separate suppliers at the same time, then unless they've worked together very well before or have got a very clear engagement strategy, you can find misunderstandings in terminology, in behavior, in methodology, gaps in functionality that one of those partners and you didn't think about. So one assumed one was doing it, one assumed the other was doing it, or maybe no one thought about it at all. So again, there are some the values in doing this all with one partner, but again, it has some cons. So the cons of this overall are CRM replacements are intensive. Website replacements are intensive. Doing both of them at the same time is very intensive. So you have to question whether you have the appetite and the latitude with your staff availability and ability to do this at the same time. If you do it sequentially, one after the other, then they still have to do the same types of work, and they'll probably have to do more work, but it's obviously spread over a longer time. And similarly with cash flow, if you do them simultaneously, it costs more in a short period, but actually it costs less than doing them in series, because you do things once, you don't have to repeat things and undo things in the second project because of decisions made in isolation in the first project. So that's a quick run through those. If we now look at the grafting on some portal stuff into the website. So this basically is where you're trying to add in some additional functionality. It is grafting on. It doesn't give you true automation, it doesn't give you true personalization, but it does start to at least combine your branding in one area and give a slightly more joined up experience to your member base, your stakeholder base. So the advantage of this really is that it's a faster way, a cheaper way of getting some sort of automation, but quite often this is seen as, you know, restrictive, and it ends up being a stopgap. It might be a stopgap for a couple of years, but it's a stopgap after all. So we rarely see people opting for this, although, you know, there may be good budgetary reasons or other strategic reasons that they want to do this while, you know, potentially they plan for a larger web revamp later on. And the third is a focused self-service portal directly integrated to CRM, put into a website. So this essentially gives you full integration of the portal area. So when members have signed in, stakeholders, donors have signed in, they can then start to get very personalized stuff within the self-service portal, but it doesn't give you the personalization in the rest of the website. So it'll still be a generic website for all visitors. So this can give a great deal of functionality. I mean, this is, you know, one of the single most useful advances over the last 5 years or so, where most of our customers, in fact, all of our customers go for this now, but many of them were going for this, you know, 6, 7 years ago. So it takes a lot of the admin out of your organization and puts it in the hands of members and stakeholders, and they also have the ability to do a lot more engagement. You can drive that engagement, you can provide personalized collateral, downloads, information, training, and so on. And the more of that they consume, the more you learn about them, so the better you can target the personalization. So reasons for going for this without a full website refresh: it's faster, it's easier, and it's less expensive. But done right, it could be a stepping stone to a full refresh as well. So we've covered some of the cons. You know, it gives you personalization, but not across the whole website, and it does give you the ability to capture data within the sign-on area, but not generally across the whole area, the whole website. So picking up from those and trying to illustrate some of those scenarios in some of our customers, these all have CRM connected to some part of the website, be it just a portal or embedded portal or the whole website. And I'll try and show you some of the differentiation there. So first one is the Royal Town Planning Institute. Been the customer for 7 years or so, and we've done more and more and more work for them each year. But they've got a web partner that they like, has done a good job for them, and they're very happy with their website. So there's no point in replacing that. So we've integrated our CRM system with their existing portal, but not the wider website. And you know, what you see there for it is their website is good content, but it's always the same. So if any of you in the audience today go to the website, you'll see the same stuff. It doesn't change depending on who's visiting. And a lot of it is focused on providing events and training. You know, like many institutes, RTPI has a good cash flow from that sort of area. So they want to provide lots of information about it, but really it's hoping that the generic events that they're displaying are relevant to every visitor, which of course they're not going to be, because every visitor is going to be interested in slightly different angles. So the visitor has to go and, you know, if they're interested enough to start with, they have to search for the sort of things that they're interested in. It's not served to them. So there's less immediacy and less feeling of, wow, this is exactly the sort of thing I was looking for. So that's a generic view of where you get with a static website. So the pros of this approach: they were happy with their website and the website organization. So there's no reason to change that. And it means that you've got the same common look and feel that everyone's comfortable with. So it can be a minimal approach. Of course, you need to integrate to provide those new functions in the portal area, but it's working. What I would say is there's no personalization, as I've mentioned, but also in the project, because you've got two different suppliers, the implementation of CRM and integration to the website, they're both organizations have mutually dependent tasks. So it needs much more project management and alignment on the resources and the deliverables to avoid the issue where one firm's waiting for the other, and therefore, they may be charging you while they wait, and so on. So that needs better thinking and management from you or from one or other of those organizations. But how to make the best of it? So firstly, separate suppliers get an engagement agreement. So who's going to do what, when, and who's in charge of what? Is the data managed in Dynamics? The answer, to my mind, always should be yes. And remember, we do both website and CRM. The CRM is about data and process. That's where it should be managed, not on the website. So you need to get agreement of that up front, but also common working practices. How does the web organization build their projects? How does the Dynamics organization build their projects? They need to agree those so that they both have the same terminology, understanding, and steps. Then you move on to the project plan. Too many projects like this start with a project plan, and you don't have that agreement stuff up front. So that's the first thing. The second, I would always say, and this is the reason we got into web development in the first place, because we've done Dynamics for over 15 years. We've done website for over 5 years. We worked with a lot of web organizations that are great at branding, design, beautiful websites, but they don't think about data, they don't think about processes, they don't think about integration. And a nice metaphor of that might be thinking of the difference between an artist and an engineer. So to our mind, good website providers are both artists and engineers. They have both in there so that you've got a well-integrated, process-driven, data handling, but beautiful website. That's what you need. Now, we found that almost every web partner we were working with was the artist, but not the engineer. And that impacted the project and the end result a lot, which is why we ended up getting into web development as well as Dynamics. To do that, we've got an integration piece, which we call Smart Connector, and that handles a lot of that cross-boundary process and data mapping. So that makes it a lot easier, but it's still important that the website people understand how that works. And the final point on this is, depending on the website technology, the personalization can be potentially rolled out across the rest of the website later on. A number of technologies don't allow that. A number of technologies do allow that. So this can be a stepping stone to further web-wide personalization. Next scenario is the RSS. So they had, when we engaged with them, planned to do web and CRM separately. But we ran through a number of the discussions that we've alluded to in this deck. And they realized that if they did both, they would have a number of significant advantages. So that's what we ended up doing. Now, the way that this one was done is it's integrated portal, new website, but they didn't want to change their content strategy. So it was a branding change, integration, portal and website, but with stable content for the third part. So again, back to the slides we saw before. So you can see that there's a portal sign-on up the top right. And what that gives you is an access to the portal area here. So we've got this lady, Gesine Reinert, and she is a fellow, as you can see. And this area here is personalized, this blue area. So this comes up as a message to her that says, okay, you can apply as your fellow, you can now become eligible for this, and you can apply here and here. So it's basically got a message for an opportunity with the calls to action and the buttons to actually do something about it. But because this is fully tailorable, we can also put other messages in. So this is my screen, for an example. So I'm registering my CPD and doing CPD through the year, but this is saying, look, you've only got a little way to go to hit your target for the whole year. Why don't you press here to do that and press here to book some more CPD? So you're able to drive more CPD. And the benefit here is you're making this a positive attribute of your website rather than CPD, which is quite often seen as, oh God, it's December and I've forgotten to do it, and then it's all whips and chains. So drive it all the way through, and you can engage a lot better. And then finally, there's this Alan Reed guy who just doesn't pay his membership dues on time. So you can start to chase this through, and because the data in the portal is all driven by personalized, the content in the portal is driven by personalized data in the dynamics, you could decide, well, look, if Alan's 10 days overdue, we'll just warn him. If he's 20 days overdue, we'll start turning off features and give him stronger warnings and emails and so on. So that's the benefits of an integrated portal. You've got control over what people see, what messaging you give them, what actions they drive. They can tag themselves and profile, and you can also therefore serve what they want to see, but also serve what you want them to see. So processes end to end. I'll be quick because I'm running out of time a little bit, but essentially it's the key thing for this is by getting a really good portal integrated, most of the mapping and integration work's already in place, so you can then roll it out over the whole website later on. Final scenario is COO. So they, again, wanted web and CRM, and they wanted it from a single supplier. That was how we met. And we've provided a complete end-to-end solution. So you can see, again, standard website, but when you're in it, you can get personalized messages because it recognizes you as a return visitor who's a member, and you get a lot of different options down the bottom for the things you want to do. So very much like the RSS example thus far, but actually everything is personalized here. So if you click on events, you're going to see events which are totally relevant to you. But then each event has, say, this particular example has breakdowns for, a conference with multiple streams. So the pricing can be driven by your member status. So they could be chargeable, they could be free, depending on your status. You might get a credit allowance of 7 sessions a year free, and then they become priced and so on. So everything that you do and the pricing of all of the things you do can be driven by the data out of the CRM if you've got complete flexibility across the whole of your website. And you can also do other things. So this is the generic website. So you go here, you've got some core information, but the next person that comes in because of their profiling information might be much more interested in career planning and development. So you've got a lot more relevant data for them there. So you're seeing different data depending on where you are in your tagging. And then, of course, every activity that visitor does can be caught within Dynamics and then analyzed and used to drive other personalization. And we've got marketing automation tools within the system that start to say, you've done this and you've done that, well, why don't you do this? So it's very much like that sort of Amazon type experience where you're basing future content and suggestions on previous activity. So again, I've covered a lot of this, but as we mentioned, doing both together is cheaper than doing them separately. And a key thing is making sure that your staff understand what that cross-departmental, cross-web and CRM process flow can give them, because it's a very, very big leap from where a lot of organizations are with fragmented systems and email blasts and so on. So that's a key consideration. So very quickly, if we go on to the survey. So Alan, do you want to comment on things?
Absolutely. So if we just publish the results, what we're seeing is, again, not a great indictment of the supplier marketplace, present company excluded, of course. What we've got is that half of you, exactly half, are saying that you probably need to replace your back office or digital systems or both. And then the other half actually has put in relatively new systems but are struggling to make it work. And I'd be really interested, but I haven't got time, of pursuing how much of that is because things were handled separately, or difficulties with across suppliers and so on. So yes, people are still struggling is the short version of that. So yes, Steve, we have, I think if we just tackle one question on the Q&A, because we have really run out of time. So a question that we've had is, how common is it now for nonprofits to do an app as well as a website when it comes to digital? How many nonprofits are you seeing with an app? Is it something you come across in your projects?
Yeah, I mean, we built our first app in probably 2017, 2018. So I think it's getting more and more common. The thing to always question is it really an app that you need, or is it just a website that can work properly on mobiles and so on? So the areas that we're building apps for are for much better in-event experience, or for organizations like ASCL, which is the Association of School and College Leaders. They use it, they're a trade union essentially, so they use it as a news broadcast mechanism. And you can see a picture right at the beginning of this slide deck, at the beginning of this presentation. So through COVID, that was brilliant for them, because they were able to get great messaging out and great messaging back in through their app, which they wouldn't have been able to do on the website. So it's more and more common, but the key is to make sure it's fully integrated into this whole scenario.
Fantastic. So I just wanted to say thank you on the questions. We haven't got time to go over them, some really good ones. We'll do a written response, if I could trouble you for that, Steve, to all of the questions that have come in during the webinar. And we'll also circulate, I believe you're planning to circulate the slides and the video of this webinar. So great. Now, so Steve, I'm afraid I haven't got time to go through all of the questions that are there. But we'll do it by email.
All right, so I've left the 2 advice slides up at the end, so you're welcome to read those through at your leisure. But these are obviously very glib summaries, high-level summaries. If you want to talk about any of these issues in more detail, then just drop me a line. I'm very happy to do that, and we don't bite. We don't try and surprise you into buying stuff from us. We'd be very happy to discuss your situation and just give you advice if that's what you're after. And with that, I'd like to say, we've got a membership health check, which we have on our website. So just if you want to find out a good snapshot of the real state of your systems and where we suggest you improve it, just follow that link. It'll ask you 2 or 3 minutes worth of questions, and then it will give you a tailored response on where we think your key issues lie. And there are some more events next month, the month after. So again, keep visiting our events site. You'll be able to see other things which we hope are relevant to you. So I hope that was good. We had a lot to get through, probably more than we should have done. So lesson for us. But anyway, as I say, if you want more detailed conversation about what your particular situation is, just reach out and we'll be happy to correspond or talk about it. So thanks very much. Hope you enjoyed that. Bye for now.
Thanks a lot, Steve. Thanks a lot, everybody.